Uh, Good evening, everybody. This is Manhattan Community Board One's Environmental Protection Committee. This is May 18th. I'm Tammy Meltzer, Chair of the Board, subbing in for the Chair of Environmental Protection tonight. So our first speaker is Assemblymember Deborah Glick, who's here to talk about her bill 1749A and the commiserate bills 1464A for the Senate. Deborah, take it away.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Definitely.
Great, perfect. Always checking before I run on for 10 minutes and then nobody knows what the hell I said. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act, which we call PREA. It's been around for a number of years. We have made a lot of amendments over last year and into this year. We've done that by sitting down with environmentalists and business folks. The business folks we have met with literally scores upon scores of meetings over the last few years, and they have a lot of complaints because they don't want to they don't want to do it. And every time there's a new thing, oh, but if you only, and of course, in the end, no matter what we do, they won't support it. We're trying to blunt their opposition. The bill is a response to two major things. One, a solid waste crisis, which has our landfills filling up, the cost to the city and other municipalities or individuals who in other parts of the state may pay for private hauling. Uh, that cost and the fact that we're running out of space. And when we run out of space, we ship it further, which is a different environmental problem of putting it on trucks and taking it elsewhere, which we are doing now. We're putting it on a barge and taking it across the river, spewing more emissions. And two, the toxic chemicals that are in much of this packaging. So we try to address the solid waste issue, but we also deal with the health concern that comes from many of these chemicals. Um, most people think that these chemicals are tested by the government, and we are assured that they are healthy or at least not damaging. Not true. Most of these chemicals are never tested, but the ones that we ban in this, which is a limited number, uh, are things we know are poisonous. Lead, cadmium, mercury, formaldehyde, which you shouldn't come in contact with until you've already left this mortal coil. Um, so we started with a bill that said over 10 years you should reduce your packaging by 50%. We now are at a point where we're asking companies over a 12-year span, staged in steps, to reduce their packaging by 30%. We also have a look back period so that if some company has actually been a good um, steward in terms of trying to make reductions, they get credit for it. Something like this is just paper with a plastic hanger. Actually, it's a hard cardboard hanger. Most of them used to have like a plastic insert. They got rid of the plastic insert. They get credit. Where they haven't, they pay a fee into a producer responsibility organization, and the less they make of excess packaging, A, they save money on the packaging, and B, they pay less into the fund. The fund is used to defray the cost of operating the program and sending money back into municipalities so they can increase and improve their recycling infrastructure. Hence the name Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure. So what have we done most recently? And I won't bore you with all the details, but the Roman numeral outline is they complained that we can't do a patchwork, state here, state there, very complicated, very difficult. So where we could, we've aligned with the other states that are doing this: Minnesota, California, Colorado, Washington, Maine, and Maryland, I believe. So Minnesota is the one they look at the most. Why? Two reasons. One, it doesn't require source reduction. Well, that's one thing we can't actually do. We actually want them to reduce packaging. And two, we don't ban advanced recycling, which is the faux notion that you can take plastic and make new plastic out of it. That is about 6% effective. But Minnesota didn't do anything about that because, as it happens, you're not allowed to have advanced recycling in Minnesota. So we don't ban it. They wouldn't get a permit here because of air quality requirements, but we don't ban it. We simply say it doesn't count as recycling. So we've aligned with other organizations. There are some technical things we've done. They didn't like a toxic task force. We eliminated it, and we have a Department of Environmental Conservation that can oversee that. They didn't like the extra layer of an attorney general is sufficient, not an inspector general. Well, we got rid of it because DEC didn't like it either. So we have aligned with other states the same timeline for recyclability in 2032, the creation of service provider, and that would be not a municipality, because not every municipality deals with waste. Sometimes they contract with a private service provider. So we just said, all right, we'll just adopt the producer definition from Minnesota, the de minimis producer, and and align with them over this service provider and service provider standards. We also do not impact. We went from those companies that have $1 million annual revenue to 5 million. So we, in this bill, that pretty much covers 90% of the farms in New York State. We took a step further for co-ops, milk co-ops, because in a lot of instances, there are smaller farms that work through a co-op. If they have fewer than 50, if they have 50 or fewer employees, we don't capture them because we want to support dairy farmers, which have been on their uppers. The things that we do in terms of toxics, we reduced a few of them, but we retain PFAS, biphenyls, phthalates, antimony, and the heavy metals, as I mentioned, lead, cadmium, formaldehyde, and some others. So we've stretched out some of the timelines. So the bill, why am I even talking to you about it? We would like every community board to weigh in with a resolution. I think we've probably supplied it a template. If we haven't, we would be happy to, just to be on the record that would save the city of New York hundreds of millions of dollars year in, year out. So we're asking community boards to say, hey, legislature, we're not sure what how people feel about what the rules of each community board is in terms of weighing in on specific legislation. Of course, I would love you to say, pass this bill, but if that's not where the rules of the community board stand, we would like the community board to say, hey, we have a crisis, both in solid waste that we are drowning in, and the toxic chemicals associated with a lot of the plastics and the packaging that come into our homes that neither our kids nor our pets should be sitting in. But if you've got a cat and you've got a box, the cat's in the box, no question. So we would like you to just say the legislature should address this because this is a growing problem and y'all should do something about it. And, that's kind of the pitch. But I don't know if people want to ask specific questions. We have come up to the gate every year close, but no cigar because we run out of time. The debate on this bill will be the full 4 hours. And as you can see this year, with the budget not yet completed, here we are at May 18th with just, after this week, 2 weeks of session. So getting the time to do this is going to be pretty tight. I have to beg and whatever. I have gotten a commitment to present to the members, which we call a conference. So it would be great if we could say, and we've been hearing from, which we have, community boards around the city have been responding. So we'd like to say, members, don't be chicken shit, technical legislative term. Don't be chicken shit and say you're a yes so we can get this onto the floor without the speaker feeling that it's a crapshoot. He wants to know that we have the votes before, and that's with every bill. They want to know the bill is going to go. So we've come up a little short because people have misrepresented their position. They tell me a yes, and then they run and go, "Oh, I'm afraid," to the speaker. So we want to have local communities saying, "Hey, save it." Affordability is the big thing, and I will say that the opposition says three things, and then I'll shut up. One, it's going to cost more money at the store. Two, some of these products won't be available. And three, we can't do this. It's too hard. So, number one, both Consumer Reports and NAACP put out a joint letter saying that, they've looked at some of the studies and there's no evidence that this has been done in various jurisdictions, including Europe and Canada. No evidence that there's any increased cost to consumer. B, the kinds of things that would be not available on the shelf, no evidence, but it might be something like Lunchables that they took off of the lunch list for schools because it had lead and cadmium. So yeah, it's possible that there might be some poison in some food product that maybe shouldn't be on the shelf, but there's no reason to think that things are going to disappear and be unavailable to constituents anywhere. And three, it's not that hard. I would say that most of these big companies, the majority of what's in our grocery stores is produced by 10 companies. They operate internationally and they have to meet some of these things elsewhere. So, and are making changes. We're all seeing that. So thank you for your time and your attention, and I will put a lid on it.
All right, let's go around the room. Sarah, questions?
Nope. I just want to support it.
Okay, Jeff?
I do have a few questions. I generally support the concept.
I'm not going to hear this.
Oh, sorry. I have a handful of questions. I generally support the concept, but just like resiliency, we all support resiliency, but we don't necessarily support the plan as laid out in front of us necessarily. I tried to do a little bit of research on this before the meeting, so I have some questions based on that. As I understand it, there are 7 other states that have statutes somewhat similar to this, but this statute is far more comprehensive and aggressive in enforcement than any of the other states. Is that right? And if so, why?
We have, there are aspects to this bill that are different from other bills, and I will say that most of that is dealing with toxic materials.
Right, that's one of the ones I've seen in terms of the.
I'm sorry, I'm really having trouble hearing you. So
These things, is this mic working?
It should be.
One of the differences is the mandatory 30% reduction in packaging. I heard you say it started at 50 and went down to 30, but what's the magic of that number? Is there some, I mean, we can kind of anecdotally see a lot of packaging that looks unnecessary, but why 30 as opposed to 25, as opposed to 40, as opposed to 10? I mean, what's magic about 30?
Well, there's no magic. Other than trying to ensure that there is sufficient space in our landfills, which are filling up, and the cost to shipping our garbage, which largely New York City ships most of its garbage. So the cost is both in emissions, in tractor trailer traffic and the damage to roads, and to the upstate communities that would like us to keep our own damn garbage home. So there's
Yeah.
no magic to, because living next to a landfill has other issues. It's not just smell, it is as this decomposes, it creates methane, which is an emission, which isn't healthy for all of us, and also there is what's referred to as leachate that can, it's sort of the ooze that goes into the groundwater or waterways. So we have, there are multiple layers of environmental impact that we're trying to deal with. So 30% is not, it's a guesstimate based on the needs assessment by the Department of Environmental Conservation did a needs assessment. That's a part of dealing with the solid waste issue, and sort of how long, we have 15 to 25 years on our landfills, and what would extend their lives since we're talking about 12 years from now, and these things are going to be at their end life shortly thereafter. So frankly, we probably should be doing more than 30%, but that was sort of a compromise that we arrived at.
Yeah, I guess where I'm heading is the first issue that you identified as sort of the opposition issue, which is the sort of the consumer cost issue. Just commonsensically, it sounds like this type of legislation would shift cost from taxpayers onto producers. In fact, I think some of the supportive information makes that that statement. Of course, producers don't absorb the cost just out of their profits. They pass them on to the consumers, generally speaking. None of the other states, the 7 other states, have this 30% reduction. And I didn't see any kind of cost analysis or anything like that in terms of how comfortable can we be that consumers aren't paying the extra cost. I mean, after all, taxpayer dollars are consumer money too, but the tax system is somewhat progressive. And so to some extent, a taxpayer funded expense is more equitably distributed than a consumer cost increase, which tends to be borne by the lower income people more heavily than the upper income people. So what kind of comfort can you give on that cost shifting?
Obviously, over time, when companies are actually using less material, they are actually saving money. It is in their interest. So when they, as they transition, and the whole point is to give them time to make reasonable transitions. And I will say that there's evidence that they're doing this already. Because they're multinational corporations in most instances, and they are required to do this in other places. I would point out that Amazon was required to reduce its plastic in Europe, which it did, and then it added more in to us. So it would be nice if they were good citizens. So using less material generally costs them less. So that's one part of it. And the other is that they're responding to the marketplace. So I have for the last probably couple of years used laundry strips instead of a big jug, plastic jug, which is mostly water. Well, that's a response to the marketplace is Arm & Hammer now has laundry strips in the supermarket next to their jugs. So people can make a choice. And I think that there are different levels, but I don't think that, and I understand what you're saying, that if it were to cost a few cents more and one thing I will point out that the packaging, when you do an analysis of the cost of the product versus the cost of the packaging is not the substantial cost of what the consumer is paying. It is the product in which it exists. So reducing the packaging, if anything, should ultimately, not that they will ever do that, should reduce the cost of the item, but the primary cost of the product is the product, not the wrapper.
I mean, certainly I agree that this type of legislation is important. I mean, the packaging has just gotten out of hand, and it's ridiculous. In terms of your ask, do we support this particular legislation or legislation like this? I'm certainly comfortable with supporting legislation of this ilk, but it is quite complicated legislation to try to swallow the whole thing and be comfortable that, yes, this incarnation is in fact something we support, but certainly these, I guess they call them ERP legislations, I think should be the wave of the future, and having a state like New York enact one is a good thing, given the size of the New York market and so forth. So I'll listen more to try to figure out whether I like this particular incarnation of the legislation as opposed to the concept, but I do like the concept.
Let me just answer one more point, and that is that there are healthcare costs associated with continuing to allow the toxins in, and those costs will fall to individuals and the.
Christine, you're up next. No.
Oh, Deborah, I think we lost you audio-wise.
Christine, can you unmute yourself?
Hi, thank you for this. So I come from a unique perspective here as a manufacturer of natural cleaning products for over 31 years. So I do support you in your efforts with this, as well as the onus, just to clarify on the packaging, the onus should be on the manufacturer. As a manufacturer, I say that. I think oftentimes the cheaper things are used just to get more margin, and that's what you're dealing with. I would say that maybe there's something that needs to be done to look at to make sure that they don't throw it onto the consumer, because they will certainly do that. But these companies certainly have the budget and the ability to change it, which I would say that as someone who manufactures laundry detergent, assembly member, it's a little bit difficult to go from a liquid to a strip, just for many reasons, production wise, for a company that's under $5 million or even in between the 10. So, but it doesn't sound to me like you're asking that. You're specifically asking for a reduction in their current packaging. Is that correct? Okay.
Deborah, we have lost your audio. We're getting some pretty static feedback from you.
Can you talk for a second?
If maybe you connected to headphones, is that possible? Can others hear Deborah, or is it just the room? No.
Okay, give us a second, Deborah will be right back.
One thing that might help, and I'm not, we can't hear you yet. If you want to try clicking on the little, at the bottom of your webinar screen, there's an arrow next to the mute button. And if you click on that, it should bring up your audio options. And maybe you can check if either your microphone or your speaker aren't connected properly to your computer. That's often what happens with me.
And in the worst case scenario, we can give you a telephone number to dial in for audio.
We can't hear you. Do you want to try maybe leaving the webinar and then rejoining?
All right, see if that works. Start talking. No.
She has to unmute herself, Deborah, first, Tracy.
Tracy, can you?
There we go. Hi, Deborah. Nope. Deborah, can you try dialing this number? Actually, I emailed it to you.
We could.
She's trying.
You know what, if she's gonna dial, no, she should be.
I think we should move Deborah and then get rid of all the Tracy's.
It's not, on the same, it's not big ones.
Hi, all. I don't know what's happening. I'm sorry. We're trying to.
Do we want to try one more time with Deborah speaking into the phone, talking to you, and then Tracy, you would stay unmuted, so we would project over your audio?
Problem solving, 101.
Okay, go ahead and talk and see what happens. Try again.
Can I be heard?
Yes. Good solution.
Our systems here are very complicated. And I don't know, I'm going to get feedback. Well, let me just say that we don't ask anyone to do, we believe in innovation. We don't tell them how to do it. But they're the only ones who can reduce packaging. The consumer can't. And we don't say you have to do it this way or that way. We just say you got to reduce your packaging.
Okay, so I'm going to push back on that. So as someone like me who is a smaller company, but I sell laundry detergent in a jug and that's it. I don't have anything around it. I don't do anything else. I also sell it in glass. But if you're selling a liquid detergent, are you then going to be asking someone to switch to strips, which is a completely different R&D experiment?
No, absolutely
no.
not. And
Okay.
and we don't bother anybody who's not making $5 million.
Right. But still, 5 million is not that. That's still a very small business, in my opinion. So I mean, you're looking at the P&G people who have billions of dollars in R&D who can absolutely do this. So I'm just concerned where that bar lies. And the second thing I'd like to ask is that you mentioned that they do this in the EU, but they don't do it here. And I also am well aware of ingredients that they can't use in the EU, but they still use them here. Is there any way to work in the bill that we can ask them that what is acceptable in the EU is used here? That we could have that same.
No.
No?
We are, I mean, the big thing is that we already have waivers that relate to federal requirements and the like. We certainly would never get anywhere by saying you have to be doing what they do in the EU
Okay.
in statute.
Okay. Thank you. That's it. Thank you.
Richard?
Yeah. Hi, Deborah. Recognizing the concerns that you just heard about small business, I think that is an important one to keep in mind. But what I was going to say is that with what this bill does, from my perspective, that I completely applaud, is that it does two things. It drives innovation and gives industry time to do that. And it moves costs to where they belong, which is both the producer and the consumer, regardless of the tax. You know, I understand the potential impacts on lower income people. However, as a consumer, you have to pay for the costs of what you consume, and I think this will tend to do that. So I certainly agree with those two driving concepts. I think the time that you've put in the bill allows that to happen. At least I'd like to think that. It seems like you've done the research to account for that. And I have sort of two things that always annoy the hell out of me, and how are they dealt with? The thin plastics that we have around us all the time, like garment, coming out of cleaners, the packaging, the plastic packaging, and Whole Foods and all of that. How is that dealt with in here? I didn't quite get it.
Packaging that is plastic is a primary. If it's a primary packaging, there is an incentive to reduce that over time.
Okay, so all those soft film plastics are addressed in the concept here in the bill.
To the extent that we are responding to plastic as a primary packaging, yes. As I said, this item on their own, they eliminated the plastic insert, and that's
right.
Once you bought it 5 years ago, it had a plastic insert. You buy it now, it doesn't. They would get credit for having made that change.
So I hate to just be focused on this little small pet peeve of mine, but you go to the dry cleaners and you get your clothes out and it's in this plastic and there's tons of it. Is that considered primary packaging? Is that addressed in the bill? I just find it so annoying when I do it all the time.
All levels of packaging are addressed in terms of making products more recyclable. And plastic is the least recyclable, so there is an encouragement to change by having a recyclable standard in the out years that is consistent with California, Minnesota, and other states. So things that are recyclable are cardboard, paper, glass. Those things are highly recyclable, and post-consumer content is part of the requirement in the out years.
Okay. And but something that's not packaging, that is currently not recyclable, and here my example is batteries, that's not
Batteries are
included.
actually completely different, and you are supposed to be recycling those. There are places for recycling of batteries, and we just did a bill to deal
So
with
it's-
recycling batteries of bike batteries and scooter batteries.
Okay, I've got to do my homework then. I haven't seen that. Well, all that being said, I certainly applaud what's behind it and would support our resolution here.
Okay. Christine, do you still have your hand up or hand up again?
I do. I have my hand up again. I have one more question, Deborah. I find this very interesting because it will somewhat affect me, but not really. But in many ways, I'm extremely pro this, and I do this in my own business, but there's certain things too that I'm concerned about, like the nuance here. If they do a workaround and then they decide, so they're going to switch to powder, but they're going to put it into, the plastic, the little detergent baubles.
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
So the little plastic detergent baubles. All right. So that is in essence going to reduce their packaging, but that is going to then leach microplastics into our water system that we don't need. So I'm sure you covered that, but I just am asking that you did.
Yes, I should have pulled out
It's not in.
some of the more technical items, but yes, the producer of Tide will say, "We've been great. We took the big jug and we made it into these little things that are poisoning your kids." We don't accept that as there is a section of law that says that, and that's part of the recyclability requirements, that the materials that you're changing to have to be more recyclable, and by 2032, you have to be aligned with Minnesota, California on the recyclability standard and the post-consumer content of recycled material, which those pods do not meet.
And
Okay, Laura Starr, I think, is our last hand, I think, and then unless anybody else on the sideline. Oh,
yeah,
and then we're back to Jeff. Okay. Understand that we have quorum. Our goal is to do a resolution. There's a draft here, so let's keep working towards the goal. Laura? Oh, Laura. And Christine, is your hand still up? Okay, we'll take it down for you, no worries. All right, Laura's hand is up, but Laura's not there. When Laura comes back, potentially. Jeff, you're next.
well, just following up on Christine's point or example. So her jug is her packaging. I just went through the definitions in the statute. So under this legislation, she's either got to reduce the size of her jug by 30%, or change the product in some way. That jug cannot remain in its existing dimensions under the legislation. And so what's someone like Christine supposed to do? To not sell that product anymore, change the product, or what is that kind of company supposed to do? To meet
Well,
the
you
reduction?
read a little further that in the event that there is a inability to meet a particular standard, there are waivers that can be applied for, and the Department of Environmental Conservation reviews and determines whether or not there is an inability to meet a particular standard, and there's a waiver process. And the waiver we've changed from a 1-year to a 5-year waiver.
So basically, anybody who sells a liquid in a container is going to need a waiver unless it's a beverage. I see beverages are excluded from this coverage, but any other liquid would need to get a waiver,
including makeup.
including, well, it depends on what's defined as the packaging.
I'm
In
having
the
trouble
case of,
hearing.
in the case of makeup, the plastic case is probably not packaging, it's probably the product. But
No,
in Christine's case, her product is her detergent.
I'm
not the
thinking
jug.
lotions, potions, micellar
Could
waters,
be, yeah.
all of those things.
Yeah.
Deborah?
Well, a few things. One, if there is a reuse and refill operation, which some of the products that are using glass jars for detergent and laundry, if it's a reuse and a refill, they are exempt. So that's number one. But if you're, so if it is in the way that when I was a kid, we got milk bottles. They were reused because they were taken back, they were washed, sanitized, and refilled. They would be exempt. So that there are some of the companies that are selling an item that they expect to have a circular economy around. And if there is no alternative, they can apply for a waiver. There are some kinds of wrappers that may be required through the federal food and drug requirements. Those can, it's clarified that those have waivers.
Tammy,
Yes?
hi.
I will
Sorry,
go
I
back.
was trying to unmute before. Is it okay if I ask my question?
Hit it, absolutely.
Thanks, Deborah. I think this is a great bill, but one question I have is there a way to link the packaging with a requirement to have a way to recycle it? Like there's so few places to recycle film and other types of packaging. I don't even know if it does get recycled, like plastic bags and things and bubble wrap.
That's
A
not.
lot of things are not recycled. We have New York State people over recycle. They recycle things that are not recyclable.
Well, right.
That creates a part of the problem.
Okay.
So our bill envisions using more recyclable material. There is an encouragement for that. It's what we refer to as an eco-modulated fee.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of it. And then there is a post-consumer content that is part of trying to create a circular economy.
And just one other follow-up, like in creating these more recyclable materials, is the process itself also good for the environment, or are we screwing the environment by trying to be environmentally good citizens with the outcome?
Well, obviously we don't count advanced recycling, which are all of the chemical or extreme heat things to deal with plastics. We don't count that as recycling because it's not overly successful and it is environmentally damaging where they are allowed to do it. So that's the answer. We don't consider it as recycling, so they don't get credit for it in the recycling.
No, but what I'm asking is, like, let's say in producing those like recyclable compost bags that many of us use, is that process itself okay for the environment, or are we?
I don't know how those are produced, so I can't answer the question.
Okay, but you see where I'm headed. In other words, like,
yes, and what I was
it's
saying
got to
was-
work from start to finish. That's all. Like,
I
I don't
was
want to be
saying-
voting for something that makes us look like we're so environmentally righteous, but actually the way that these things are produced is really bad for the environment. And I don't know the answer to that, but I'm just
Well,
bookmarking that point.
one part of the answer is advanced recycling is what is pushed by the chemical industry.
I see.
And it is generally, most of those processes are not, A, effective, and B, are damaging. So
Got it.
we
Okay.
don't ban it in this bill, but we don't count
Okay.
it as recycling. So in
I
that
see.
way, we're not encouraging it.
Okay.
It is
Okay.
also true that we don't have operations in New York that would be required of an air quality permit that has one. So these companies aren't actually doing it here, but they are doing it in other states. And we are trying not to encourage that by not saying it is counting towards your recycling.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think that's really important. Thank you.
Okay. Jeff,
No, I asked my question, but I've
so,
been scribbling on the resolution.
okay, so let's move forward because we're gonna do a resolution. And let's see how we can get to a resolution that seems to address all of the concerns that have been brought up. All right, Deborah, thank you for getting a draft for us, for our community board to consider. So Jeff, you start us off.
Okay, this is a conceptual point.
Can I,
either agree with.
Go to my other meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, you're leaving Tracy with us, right?
I want to thank you for your time and your
I'll stay.
patience
Thank
with
you
the
for all the
screwed up
explanation.
systems
Deborah,
we have.
thank you. Okay, hit it.
So I have some hesitancy about this particular legislation, every word in it, all for some of the reasons, the examples that we've talked about. However, as I said, I think this type of legislation is important and overdue. And taking up Deborah on her comment that even in support of this general thing, if not the specific legislation, would be nice. If we were going to go that route, I'd suggest that in the be it resolved, so in the first paragraph where it says, urges the New York State Legislature to take steps to address this solid waste crisis as soon as possible by passing strong and effective, and I would insert in there, and this is the generic type of statute, extended producer responsibility legislation, semicolon, and then would say Senate bill and Assembly bill, the legislation deserves strong consideration by the legislature. So it's a shout out to the legislation. It's not explicitly saying, yes, we support this specific legislation. I don't think we're in a position to suggest amendments or anything like that. This is complex litigation with lots of nuances to it. So I don't feel equipped to say support it, but if you change this word here or this concept there. But I'm reluctant to say yes to it. I worry about this absolute 30% reduction. No other state, there's 7 other states that have this kind of legislation. None of them have a mandatory fixed percentage reduction. And, you know, Christine's business couldn't make that product anymore without a waiver. Anybody who sells a liquid product couldn't make that product without a waiver. I don't think they intend the legislation to have that kind of effect, although some people may say, yeah, that's good. We don't want products, liquid sold in anything other than a recyclable glass container anymore. I don't think consumers would like that very much, but, and that's just one example of, you know, the example of the dry cleaner stuff, that's not covered in here because it's not a product that's sold. The packaging and the definition in the legislation is packaging of a product sold. You're dry, you're not selling your clothes, they're providing a service. You know, you could change that definition slightly and pick it up, but as it's currently drafted, it doesn't pick it up. So I would be perfectly comfortable supporting ERP legislation and even comfortable giving a shout out to this particular legislation, which kind of implies that that if they passed it, fine, that's a good thing. But we're not literally saying, yes, pass this legislation. And that's just my point of view.
Agreed.
Richard, Christine said agree on, I think you were referring to Jeff, right?
Oh,
think
me?
Christine-
Yeah, yes, 100%. I agree with that. I really need to chime in on this so you know that I've been working for decades to figure out a way to put a liquid product into something that isn't plastic. Decades. It doesn't exist. It just doesn't exist right now. And for those that say like, seventh generation, remember they had that like corrugated, like look, that cardboard bottle.
Yep.
Inside it was plastic. Okay. So there's nothing right now. I've been trying and trying. There's nothing I'd like more. We could go back to pre-liquids and then we look at powders, but then you have a consumer issue and you're going to get huge pushback on people who can't have liquid laundry detergent. They're just not going to go for it. And I understand that Deborah likes her strips. Some of the strips have plastic in them. A lot of the new things that we think are cute and are working better and are helping us, as Laura mentioned, are actually not. I spend a lot of time looking at this. This is my industry. So I'm 100% with Jeff. I'm not comfortable signing on to this resolution yet either without like changing it a little, because it has to have considerations like this. It can't just be that blanket. Or it won't pass, I don't think. I mean, if people really punched holes into it.
What kind of considerations are you referring to?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, Tammy, so if you give me, the ability to, and you say, okay, so we're going to give you a waiver for 5 years. But like I said, I've been spending decades trying to figure that out. The laundry detergent and the softener happen to be my top. That's like 80% of what I sell of my profit, right? So, I mean, without it, I don't have a company. And I would love nothing more to do that. But then I'm also in this weird area of that I'm a big company, but I'm not that big. And so like that, the new innovative products, those are limited to Procter & Gamble. They're not for someone my size. We get the trickle down because in order to do it, you have to buy 500,000 bottles, right? I don't have that ability. So you could really end up hurting a lot of businesses that fall. I think 5 million is like, that's a small business. 10 million is still a small business. Just with the way margins are right now with everything and the cost. Liquids are a deep concern. I'm not sure how Deborah sees what she would see anyone who's selling a liquid right now, what they should do. That's what I would love the answer. I think Jeff pushed that there. And I don't think we got an answer on that. What are we going to do with liquids? Because that's a really big issue.
Okay, Richard.
So, I obviously hear Jeff and Christine. I admire and respect your business model and what you're attempting to do. I think what you're suffering from, however, is that the larger industry isn't innovating because they don't have to. And if they had been innovating all of this time, you might have found a product, a package that you could use. And a bill like this should be forcing that kind of innovation. And one kind of innovation, which Deborah, I think, alluded to, is some kind of more massive recycling of, I could see a whole industry coming together of recycling plastic jugs for companies over the course of time. Now, if this went into effect this year, next year, 3 or 4 years, yeah, you'd definitely be in trouble, and these issues are really concerning. But if I understand this correctly, we have a 12-year introduction period that gives industry time to recycle, also time to adjust the bill, for that matter, because bills do change as issues come up. My concern about watering it down too much is that we look for perfection and no one will ever pass this bill. It won't get passed this year if we don't exactly push at least a little bit towards this bill. And so I don't mind the language that says such as this. You know, it's not saying specifically this bill, it's saying such as. And to water that even down even further, just kind of one notch less of an ability to make something happen when things have not been happening forever. And this is destroying our environment.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think the other language that Jeff used, maybe you could read it again.
Sure.
That sounded pretty good.
Let me roll. Ready?
Okay.
Therefore, be it resolved that CB1 urges New York State legislators to take steps to address this solid waste crisis as soon as possible by passing strong and effective extended producer responsibility legislation, such as. It's
No,
not
no,
in there.
I struck the such as.
Well,
And
I
I would have
think-
put a semi, well, let me just tell you what my
Hold on.
point was.
such as does not say it has to be this one. That's a.
No, but it's acceptable that it is what it says. And I would vote against that resolution.
That's the
because it
legal
basically-
definition is what you're saying.
Yeah, because it's the, I mean, first of all, keep in mind, this is not, plastic has been the subject of discussion, but this applies to all packaging, no matter what it's made of. So olive oil could not be sold without a waiver. Because how,
Plastic.
in glass, because that's packaging as well.
It's the
But it's
reduction of
recycled.
packaging. It's not just
Yeah,
reducing
it's-
plastic, it's reducing any size packaging.
In any plastic, and if you're selling a liquid, the only way you can reduce the packaging is to either make it thinner, some flimsier, or you just don't sell the liquid anymore.
Right.
You sell a powder or something, because you cannot reduce by 30% packaging around a liquid product
So-
without effectively
Right.
eliminating profit.
And, okay, we're Tracy,
They do have, they have exceptions to beverages, but not to other liquids.
I'm thinking olive oil.
Yeah.
Right, olive oil is not technically a beverage. You can buy your jug of olive oil like this at Costco, or you get the tiny little ones at the local supermarket and everything in between. But
I guess you could reduce the 30% by only selling 2-gallon things of olive oil and not selling, 10-ounce bottles of olive oil.
it's not 30% the size.
Sell it
Well,
bigger.
because the 30% can be on a per unit or on an overall basis in the legislation.
I'm really going to push
And
back
so-
on that. Like, so what are people going to do at Costco or restaurants now? So what are restaurants going to do who need that economy of scale in order to survive? And they're already being pushed. I just think like this is the right idea, but you're pushing it the wrong way. That
It's just that
like,
this is the only state that has this percentage reduction issue. All 7 other states don't have that. So this would be the first state to have that. Now, it makes it more effective, but it makes it very draconian for anybody who's selling a liquid product.
But
Well,
shouldn't we be
I would-
pushing more on having an ability to recycle things better? I've gone to the recycling plant here. It's a fascinating field trip if you haven't done it. But plastics on their own can only be, certain plastics, right, can only be recycled up to a maximum of 5 times. And then they break apart and then they turn into microplastics. That's just the rule. That's just it. That's universal, right? So, which is why I also often sell in glass, because glass can actually be constantly recycled, infinite, right? But it's more expensive to recycle glass, and not every facility has a glass recycling ability, right? So I'm just afraid if we push on this, just like look at the plastic bags, right? Like we ban plastic bags. I can get them anywhere now. There's probably some sitting right now in the offices there, right? Like, I just don't want it to be lip service. I really want to think it through. It's something I think about constantly as a manufacturer.
And I sit there and lament the day that I get to the supermarket and I don't have my dang bags or enough of them, and then I have to get paper bags and be charged for it. So, I think that I'm in and again, everybody has to say how they feel. If we don't do anything, we're not doing anything and we're not improving anywhere. I think that New York has improved on, I don't think you can actually get plastic grocery bags easily anymore. I think it's actually kind of hard to get them. So I think that that has worked in a very bizarre way. Not that I really enjoy schlepping around an entire trunk full of bags everywhere, but
I should also mention that this percentage reduction, although it reaches 30% only after 12 years, it kicks in at 5 years. 5 years, you have to do a reduction by 15%, which if you're selling liquid, even that. And so within 5 years, you have a serious problem with the selling. That's under, just under this.
Tracy, do you have any sense of what the the waivers would be? How that works?
I'm not gonna give a waiver, everybody sells liquid product.
You should ask her about the liquid question specifically.
Yeah, I mean, specifically, Tracy, when we're looking at liquids, right, and trying to figure out how to get that done, I'm not worried about, you know, taking the olive oils and, you know, the vinegars and Christine's question about restaurant use, right? Mixers and things like that. I mean, a lot of it comes in actually in plastic. Even though you get glass bottles at a bar for liquor, you've got
Plastic.
plastic. Do you have any thoughts on how that's gonna work?
I actually don't have, are you asking me, Tammy?
Yes, dear.
Okay, I don't have that information. Our Albany legislative staff has been working on the specific details of it, and I can get you some more information about that by tomorrow. One thing I just would say, and I know that you're seeing a snippet of this conversation without, I don't know if you've looked at the entire bill and all of the bill language, but for the past 2 years, Deborah and the Senate sponsor, Senator Pete Harckham, have met countless times with industry representatives, the large consumer products companies, and have already amended the bill, made over 100 amendments. I think we're up to like 125 or 130 amendments. So quite a few industries that have the same kind of concerns you're raising have weighed in on the very specific details of the bill. And the version that the bill is in right now that Deborah gave you an overview of includes those compromises that large consumer brands said they could live with. So in terms of how to package liquids, that's a detail I don't have, but I can get that answer for you. I can just tell you it's, you know, I know it's hard, you're getting like a very quick introduction to something that is very complex and has been discussed in great and negotiated over in great detail over the course of 2 years. So,
But
you
I
know, there's a
thought
lot of
Deborah
detail
said
that
those
that's
people
not easy
still
to
oppose.
convey this quickly. What was that?
I thought Deborah said those people still oppose, that made lots of concessions to the industry groups, but that the industry groups will not support it. They don't want it.
Well,
I thought that's
I
what
mean,
she said.
she did say that. Let me clarify. She also said it may be lip service from them. These are the petrochemical companies, the Plastics Council, the Chemical Council, they're fossil fuel companies that have suggested that they've suggested amendments. The consumer brands have told us what they could live with. But the chemical companies that actually produce the plastic that the consumer brands purchase and use for their packaging, they have hired extremely expensive lobbyists, and they've been very effective at chipping away support because the chemical companies don't want to stop producing plastic. So at the end of the day, they're not voting on it. So when I say
Well, that's my point, is that as written, still, people that have leveled the criticism on these points, maybe it's not as bad as it used to be from their perspective, but they're still not, it's not as if they agree with this. And. I
Well,
mean,
no,
I'm-
they
I'm hung
don't
up on the
agree
liquid
because they want
products.
to keep producing chemicals that are harmful to the planet because they've been profitable for them so far. So I'm not the best spokesperson for this. I was, that's why we're having you hear from the assembly member directly. But I can certainly get some more information from our legislative director. We had another meeting going on at the same time, so the legislative staff was in that meeting, and it's a busy time with the budget, so everybody's in multiple places. So I'm here as an observer. I wasn't meant to be the person answering
Yeah,
questions.
no, we're not intending to
But
quiz
I
you.
will say, but it's like, it is like going up against the tobacco companies. These are the fossil fuel companies that have huge profits at stake, and so no, they may not want this bill to happen, but the brands that the assembly member and the state senator have met with repeatedly to hear the concerns, we've tried to compromise and we've made amendments. So it's much more complex than I can provide details on right now, but certainly you should deliberate about whether the board wants to do any kind of resolution, and it may be a resolution that is just the fact is New York City does spend over $400 million a year to deal with our solid waste. So that is a concern, and this is a bill that we have support from every the council of towns and municipalities around the state. I mean, there's quite a lot of support for this already. But that's for you to deliberate whether the board wants to support it or not. We've 12 or 13 community boards from around the city have decided to support it. It's being well vetted. But certainly I'll be happy to ask our legislative team to provide more details on those specifics.
I think it's a reasonable draft. I mean, if you do the research on it, Minnesota is, I think, even stricter and tighter.
Nobody is stricter than this legislation.
No, I don't think so.
None of the others have this 30% reduction, have any 6% reduction, which is the provision giving me the agita. This is the provision that basically will make it next to impossible to sell a liquid product without a waiver. And the packaging material is not limited to plastic. You can't use glass, cardboard, anything. That's the definition of packaging material. It says, regardless of recyclability, including but not limited to such materials as, paper, cardboard, plastic, glass, metal, multi-material, and so forth. And you got to reduce all of that by 30%. And the problem is any liquid product that is impossible to do.
So it's actually not impossible to do. You increase the amount, the volume of.
That's right.
material.
You can sell 2 gallons of olive oil, but nothing less than 2 gallons.
30%.
You can make one bigger package instead of 10 small
Correct. You
packages.
can do that.
I mean, you could do things like that. That would certainly reduce, or you could, if you have 10 sizes of packaging, you've got the giant size for Costco, the middle size
You can,
for
but you have
Wegmans.
to acknowledge that it is a very drastic change in the way liquid products would be sold. And in a way that most people would find ridiculous,
California and Minnesota managed to pass legislation on
but
that.
not with these, I mean, I did. some
Is your
research.
issue the 30%?
My issue is the 30%. Is any fixed percentage. Because as soon
How
as
do you
you
get
do,
them to comply with anything if you don't have a target?
none of the other states have it.
Tracy, can we maybe ask you to, or we can look at this on our own too, but do you have a sense of how the other states' reductions have actually happened? Is 30%, where is that coming from, and how does it relate to some of the other states' reductions that they've seen? Because that might
I
be able to
don't
help
have that
us.
answer. I will.
Yeah, if we had that, we
Deborah
have some
on.
experience in how it's worked. That would be
I'll see
helpful.
what I can find out about other states. And Deborah did answer well, I'll go back to, um, I'll try to find out from our team how liquids are dealt with.
Mhm.
And the 30% reduction, have other states done that?
Yeah.
Any other states, right?
And this is just liquid packaging?
Any packaging is
Yeah.
what this
Apply
applies
to
to.
everything.
It's just it's particularly problematic with liquid because the product is the liquid, and so how can you contain it without having packaging? And if you've got to reduce that packaging by 30%, you can make it thinner.
That also creates problems.
That creates its own set of problems, that's right.
Well,
And the only way to deal with it is waiver, which is what Deborah said. I mean, she didn't say that was the only way, but that was the example, which she gave, said waiver to address that problem, but they're not gonna give a waiver to every single company that sells liquids. I have to believe that that was intentional in here because they have an exception for beverages, but they don't have an exception for any other liquids.
Well, because,
And the beverage exemption is if they're sold in recyclable containers.
I mean, it could be even bags of cookies. If you have to reduce the packaging, then you're gonna put more cookies in a package. The price is going to go up and consumers are gonna scream.
Well, yeah,
but you're gonna cut packaging waste on the cost that it, for other things. I mean, you're gonna have a balance back and forth.
see what the problem is that there's excess everybody knows, all you have to do is walk into a store, you see there's excess
Right.
ridiculous packaging there. And I'm sure that's the main problem that this is trying to address, but the problem with a fixed percentage that doesn't have a lot of exclusions is that some things are already packaged about as efficiently as they can possibly be packaged, liquids being one of them, but not the only one. But if you nonetheless have to reduce it by 30%, even though you're already efficient, it's not workable. It's a worthy goal, but it has, I think, some unintended consequences.
So my final comment to this is we can't create a perfect bill. She's been working, let me finish, please. We can't do that. What we can do is encourage something that can start something happening in the right direction. Deborah has been working on this for years. She's obviously negotiated this to great extent. I have little doubt that there is some answer to the liquid problem, and we should get an answer to that. And we even may want to put it as a question. However, to water down and not pass something today is just to extend this issue where all of this cost is borne by society. All of this cost is borne by all of us, and none by the producers directly, certainly where it belongs, and very, very indirectly by the consumer, which is not where it's supposed to be. And I think it behooves us, without saying that this is the bill, because we're not saying that when we say such as, by watering it down even further, we just undermine the ability to make some change here, however imperfect at the moment it might be. And believe me, bills get changed all the time, over time.
I think I'm scarred by the, cannabis bills and giant holes that were in them.
Can I just read my suggested language again, because I think people are forgetting what I was
okay.
suggesting. It's
Okay.
slightly different. Well,
Go
you may still oppose it, but.
Hit it.
Okay. Take steps as soon as possible by passing strong and effective extended producer responsibility legislation, semicolon. Senate bill such and such and Assembly bill such and such deserve strong consideration by the legislature, period.
I don't.
Actually, I don't think it's terrible.
I like it.
Because you're saying that we support it, and I think that what we could do, above that is put in the concerns that we still have. That we support it, but, above we have some concerns. So we could put in, the concerns that Christine was talking about, that, how it impacts small businesses. Because I think that's really,
The $5 million is.
I think you have to look
too
at
low.
restaurant, how it's going to affect restaurant. And Richard, I know you're saying that the consumers are bearing the brunt of this, but we're not. I think like industry, they're artful. They're always going to pass the buck down to the consumer. And now if you get rid of large sizes at Costco's, how are families going to that's how a lot of people survive now.
but you don't have to get rid of large sizes, Christine. It may be a company that's, sells oil in a 12-ounce bottle. Now it sells one 24-ounce bottle instead of two 12s. Actually, the grossness of it goes both ways, right? Because you're reducing overall packaging by not having a separate bottle, potentially.
Well, listen to you talk. How ridiculous is that? Is some legislation having, through happenstance, I used to sell 12-ounce bottles. Now I've got to sell 24-ounce bottles. But if before, instead I sold 6-ounce bottles, today I could get away by selling 12-ounce bottles.
Quite like that, because you can increase it. I mean, I'm not saying this is the solution, but if you have 12, you increase it to 15 ounces. And that solves your 30%. But companies all the time reduce the thing.
Yeah.
So that, and charge the same
Yeah, but
price.
why
and
should some
this-
guy who's
this have
selling
to
12
go up.
ounces today have to do 15, whereas somebody who is selling 6 ounces today can now sell 12? It's legal for one guy to sell 12, but illegal for another guy to sell 12? What kind of law is that?
Well, I think you need to.
And I get back down to it's the 30% reduction that creates all these anomalous effects. It needs to be a better written 30% reduction. It's a blunt force instrument that's going to clobber a lot of small businesses and clobber a lot of consumers with ridiculous outcomes. If more thought were put into how to define the 30% and what it applied to, the bill would be substantially improved. And that's probably why no other state has done the 30%, because it's hard to figure out a way to do it. But I imagine with some imagination, you could do it. But as written, it doesn't.
So something like CB1 raises concern that the 30%,
Fixed percentage.
the fixed 30% target is too broad.
You can have we'll have unintended consequences such
And-
as, liquids
Agreed.
being unable to be sold.
I just think, you're looking at an evil, did someone reference cigarettes, okay, so let's ban cigarettes. Let's 100%, let's ban them, right? And they also leave an incredible amount of waste, but then now people vape, right? And now that's a whole other issue. The amount of plastic from vapes are ridiculous, right? So I agree with Jeff. I'm not sure, absolutely sure that Deborah spent a large amount of time, but we're not seeing what the solutions were in there.
What you're not seeing is the changes from point A to point B.
Correct. I'm not seeing how is the restaurant industry going to deal with this? How?
Philthium. Okay,
Huh?
so where CB1 raises concerns that the fixed 30% target may be too broad and will have unintended consequences.
Just
Right.
take out the too broad and leave unintended consequences. How's that? Because
It's all liquids except for beverages. So we're having the conversation around olive oils and stuff for hospitality, which has very low margins to start with. So the 30% may be applied too broadly, or, we gotta get to that point because the next
Yeah.
line says, CB1 raises concern of the impacts to small business and the hospitality industry, which rely on low margins.
That's funny.
But I
Okay,
think
anything
it would
else?
be really effective if there was a bill against the plastic industry to put it on them to create a plastic that didn't leach toxic chemicals and that was infinitely recyclable.
Good luck with that.
I love that idea.
Right, right. But what I'm trying to say is this bill is great in the idea of it, but it's still going to fall on the consumer. And we're still not getting the manufacturer.
Yeah, but my point is that's where it should fall and not on,
Of course it
Society.
should, but it's not. This is going to fall on the consumer. They're going to get
no,
like,
it's not
or the
that.
restaurants, you know, like they're not going to be able to
My
get.
point is it should fall on the consumer. That's
No,
where
it
it should
shouldn't.
fall.
Absolutely not. I completely disagree. If you're going to manufacture something, you should be responsible with it. 100%.
No, but I agree,
100%.
but
All right, hold on, guys. In the whereases, we're gonna have to put it at the very top because it'll be on the subject line, the bill, because it's not in any of the drafts until we get down there. So, we're also we have to mention the bill by itself up in the top. Right? And we can mention the bills, and we understand it has gone through.
It's gone through committee.
Yep. It went through committee and some revisions, because those are actually in the public domain.
Mhm.
You Google the bill, you can see it.
Yeah.
And so where we're customizing for Community Board 1 is, CV1 raises concerns that the fixed, that the fixed 30% target may be too broad, will have unintended consequences.
Do we want to keep it too broad? I heard some feedback from the group.
Yes, because then the next one specifies kind of where we think it may be too broadly applied, right? And then where CV1 raises concerns on impacts to small businesses and hospitality industry, which rely on lower profit margins. And this could increase costs.
Hospitality industry.
I mean, you know, it would be really awesome if the oil that you got in restaurants came in recyclable containers all the time and, you know, kind of like the old system, you bring it back, you refill it and then use it again. It would be ideal because we were far less garbage back then. Guy who picked up an empty bottle.
I remember the milk bottles.
Milk bottles, yeah,
Oh,
and soda streams,
I love them.
right? So with all that, does that get all of our,
It's the horse that
we
pulls
changed
wagon.
it, all right, so this is where we sit, yeah, Martine, go for it.
All the way from the top.
We're using from Deborah's the first 4, where it gets down to 5, much of the trash.
Yeah.
Right, so that's all there, then we've added new ones, so.
Whereas Manhattan Community Board 1 raises concerns with Senate Bill 1464A, Assembly Bill 1749A, that the fixed 30% target may be too broad and have unintended consequences. And whereas MCB 1 raises concerns with impacts to small businesses and the hospitality industry that rely on low profit margins, and this bill could increase costs. It's a little bit.
Now, we're including the
And then
whereas that are in there.
Yes,
Okay.
Yeah.
and then the therefore be it resolved are changed as follows.
Therefore, be it resolved that Manhattan Community Board 1 urges the New York State Legislature to take steps to address the solid waste crisis as soon as possible by passing strong and effective extender producer responsibility legislation. Semicolon. Senate Bill 1464A / Assembly Bill 1749A deserves strong consideration by the legislature.
And then the last one stays as it is. Okay?
Can be mollified. The one comment where it says, and increase costs, I don't agree with that. Because when you buy something, you should be paying for, you should not be subsidized by society paying for the actual cost of that product. Your purchase has to be a choice based on its real cost. And so if it costs more to use better product that are toxic, then that's what you should be paying for, and society should not be. And that's what this bill is intended to drive. Innovation, cost back to the producers that will, some way or another, either through innovation or cost changes, will actually create a healthier environment.
It always,
I was just gonna.
So I don't, that's one section of all of this that I don't agree with.
I do think it's worth just mentioning that Deborah mentioned at the beginning that there were multiple studies suggesting the cost would not be passed on to consumers.
But
So
that's-
just wanted to bring that up.
I'd like to see proof of that. But
Even
they
if
said
it
that,
does,
they said that about congestion pricing as well, and that's not true.
my point is, even if it does,
you're
that's
saying
where
that's a
it
benefit.
belongs. That's where it belongs.
The problem that we have right now with small businesses, which are struggling, and restaurants in particular, right now,
This isn't gonna drive them out of business.
It's
Anyway,
just-
12 years to solve it, but it's economically, from an economic standpoint, that's where the costs belong,
5
not
years.
on the taxpayer or on the environment.
yes. But. I
For these
think that-
particular
But-
businesses that are small businesses are very vulnerable, and it's 5 years, not 12, that they have to figure.
That's right, it's 5 years, not 12. And that's, I'm always very sensitive to try and support small businesses wherever we can and not pass it down to the consumer, because if the consumer looks and the small business has to raise its price, then they're going, instead of at,
So Christine's company, they're going
Instead
to
of-
Procter and Gamble.
right. Instead of going to South Street Tacos, they're ending up at said chain 3 doors down, because it's just that the price differences on everything, and everything in restaurants comes, in liquid form, comes in a container. I mean, it's olive oil, it's whatever oils, it's milk, it's everything. I mean, anything that you're cooking with.
It's a vote.
It's
I've
wine.
expressed my objection to it, and
This is-
that's it.
How does that affect wine? Oh, that's beverage.
But it would have to be a recyclable bottle.
Which is less.
Or, no.
Well, I'm sure they would just put a
You could
slap
do
of
wine in a
5 cent
box.
thing on it. No, you could put the 5 cent deposit.
So let's go around and see how we feel about not having that one. I mean, I could increase costs, because I think that's,
Well, can you read the whereas
Yeah.
that has that in it?
Yeah, whereas MCB1 raises concerns with the impacts of this bill to small businesses and the hospitality industry that rely on low profit margins, and this could increase costs.
Yeah.
if you want to just take off the costs and say low profit margin.
That gets his vote, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you
Yeah,
on
my
that.
votes.
Okay,
I mean, I agree with you generally.
yeah.
on that.
All right, so, we removed that wording. Fantastic. So do I have any,
Feeling good about just, calling out
Call the
hospitality
question.
industry. Second.
okay, so this will be a vote by affirmation. Are there any abstentions? Are there any in opposition? Are there any recusals? Motion passes. Thank you very much, everybody. See you.
Thank you.
And that would be 7:40, meeting adjourned.
All right, that's the early.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody. Have a great night.
Thanks, Tammy.
Bye. What a mess.
That's my. Where did?
Goodbye all.
Bye.
Bye.